Okay, so that's why you must get a separate written document, and I'll show you that clause in a moment, separate from the contract of purchase and sale, that clearly states that they are authorizing Homelife and you to include the commission negotiation, if necessary, in their contract. That's the first step. The second step is you have to call the other realtor, the listing realtor, in advance before you present the offer and advise them that there will be a clause with respect to the compensation in the contract, so they know in advance, they're not being blindsided, and they can advise their seller, don't worry about it, but there will be, and we'll deal with it when we get the offer. That way nobody's surprised. We don't get somebody who said, you know, here, I got a perfect offer for you, and he comes walking into the seller's dining room table and says, this offer's great, and they look at it and say, wonderful, okay, the price is good, everything's great, they're all excited, and they get down to the bottom, they see this little fine print that says they got to pay more money. All of a sudden they say, what is this? You know, what are you doing here? This is a game you're playing, right? You told me this would be the compensation. What's going on here? And they get, right, understandably, very upset because it's a total shock to them. By telling them ahead of time, we avoid that possibility. At least the listing agent has the opportunity to forewarn them, don't get excited, we can counter any offer. Okay? So then a lot of people say, well, why wouldn't they just cross it off? Well, why wouldn't they just cross off the fixing of the fence? Why wouldn't they just cross off any term of the contract? They could. But you can go right back with it in again, right? You can counter the counter. The point is, the buyer has the choices. They're making the decision at that point, and they can decide if they want to pay you separately or they want to include it in the transaction. It's up to them. It doesn't matter to you. So that's why it's critically important that you follow those two steps. Oops, what have I done here? What have I done here? Something's going on here. Something's going on here. Keep showing up here. I'm trying to get rid of this. There it goes. There we go. Now, the next one I want to point out, because this is usually the automatic thing, is where do we get this separate document? On web forms, you can find this form here. And this form specifically states and has a clause that says, if the compensation being offered by a listing brokerage or a seller to the buyer's brokerage is less than the remuneration expected, then the buyer hereby authorizes the buyer's brokerage, because remember, it is your company's commission, you represent the company, to obtain through the offer to purchase such portion of the remuneration as may be agreed to by the buyer. Okay, so that's the form, that's the clause. Now, one thing you can do, if you're using a buyer agency contract, you know you have a Schedule A. All of our listing contracts, buyer agency contracts, have a Schedule A where you lay out all the various services you're going to provide, right? You can cut and paste this right into your Schedule A on your buyer agency contract. It is separate from the contract purchase and sale, so no problem. And now you have authorization if you get into a situation down the road where the compensation is less than what was agreed to with your buyer. Okay, so that's the clause right there. So let me throw it open for a moment for comments and questions before we press on.
So how do you handle it as a broker, knowing that this information's been signed and it's come in when you're reviewing an offer? How would I know? It has to be in with the deal sheet or what?
Well,
it would come in as part of the contract, right?
It probably should be. That's a good point. From the brokerage point of view, you can just you can have a copy of the Schedule A, whatever you need. Yeah, because they sign the Schedule A, right? So as well as the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just put this form into the buyer agency agreement?
That's what I said.
Oh, no, but why shouldn't it be in the standard
Yeah.
Because,
Why do you have to
because
go to
that's
the
up to you to have that agreement established with your buyer. So you put it in.
Right, but if you fill out.
And we also don't want you to just have it in there. We want you to explain what you're doing to your client. That's critically important. The buyer needs to understand exactly what's happening here.
But if they don't get the buyer agency agreement signed,
Right.
Then this form will do it.
yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Oh, if you have the buyer agency signed, you don't
You're
need
good
it.
with this.
No.
What?
If the buyer, if you are not using a buyer agency contract, just like the previous form I showed you, it is on web forms. This is on web forms. In fact, let me go one more step here. There is another form if you want both of those things.
Yeah.
Okay? So first of all, you need a buyer agency contract form signed because of your agency obligations. Even if you put 0 in the commission, it doesn't matter. You need to cover yourself for the fact that you have many other clients, and you may end up in a situation at some point where you have competing offers and therefore knowledge about other people's offers, and when one client asks you what this other guy is doing, you have a problem because you have an absolute fiduciary duty to tell them everything you know about this transaction, about this situation. So how do you hold that back? By getting the authority. So you absolutely need the buyer agency contract form signed. For that reason, if you do not get the buyer agency contract signed, then that first PIP form, which is in your handout, is available. Then, if you want to do the commission portion the way I've discussed it, and that is you want to make sure that you have a minimum amount, whatever that is, that you feel good about going home at night having worked for this person, then you put that authority also into the Schedule A or use this separate form. If you want to do both, then of course, which would be ideal, next only to the buyer's contract, then you would use this form because it has it all in there. It has all 3 of the first 3 points, plus the clause regarding the authority to negotiate the commission and the contracts.